Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. It's so good to see you. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Can you just, before everyone
Yeah.
jumps in, I just want to check with you that I have the right, let me just show you this. I just want to make sure that I have the right, da, 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 da. I'm, this is the right one here. And can I write that proudly affiliated with Project RE? Is
Yeah,
that
that's
a,
fine. Yep.
want to make sure I'm okay with that?
Yeah,
Cool.
that's great. Perfect. And then the codes, I have a code for Project RE. Um, right? They sent me a
Um,
link, but then
yes.
it
I
said just say Project RE in the drop-down menu.
Yep. And then, yeah, they could do that, but I also have the link. So if anyone clicks on this link, which we'll share at the end,
Okay.
if anyone clicks on this link, then they will also get that 25% off and it goes to Project RE. So they track it. And just so you know, we used to use Impact, the affiliate program tool.
Yep.
Everyone hated it. All of ours, they just rather had us. And on top of it, it wouldn't take, like, someone would come to us from Google Ads
Mm-hmm.
and because it wasn't a click, and then they would talk to the account executive, and the account executive would say, "Where did you hear about us?" They'd say Project RE. Impact wouldn't let you adjust it to say this actually came. And from our case, affiliates always go first, even if someone clicked on the Google branded ad that said Hemlane or whatever. So that's the long background of why we should
Gee, yeah.
process.
That's good to know for sure. That's
Yes, so we make sure that you get the credit is really what I'm trying to say.
good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so my plan, sorry, let me just lower this, is to usually it takes a minute for people to come in, and don't be alarmed if there's not a lot of people here. A lot of people watch these later, as we've kind of talked about, because it's recorded and then on the website. So you're not just talking to the people in the room, and they'll also get the link.
And are we going to redo the recording or crop out this part?
So they will edit this.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Okay.
Yes. And then yeah, and then we will we'll just I'll let you have the reins, and let me make you co-host just so that hold on. I'm gonna let them in and that'll do it.
Cool.
And then you can just share what you want to share and I'll let them do questions. Anything related to kind of property management or how to manage rentals, I think is kind of fair game in this.
I figured I would tell a story
Questions.
and
That's
give them
perfect.
some thoughts. And do most of them buy locally or remotely?
It's combo. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
All right. I'm gonna start letting them in. Hello, hello, everyone. Hope everybody's having a good Thursday. I don't know how the weather is where everyone else is, but it hailed today, which was very random in Seattle. So
It was raining here in San Francisco, so it was very similar to Seattle weather.
there you go. Okay. Um, we're gonna obviously I'm gonna give 1 or 2 more minutes just to see if anybody else wants to jump on live, but I have been using Hemlane all day because I'm deep in my getting people rented out. So I'm excited to talk about it. And maybe I'll learn some tricks of how to do my job better today. Um, and so I'm really excited about that. I don't know. But I had Dana on my podcast. We had a nice chat on there. So that was fun.
Thank
Talking
you for
about
having me on it. It's always fun to talk about property management.
yes, especially when it's from the vein of like, how do we do this ourselves, not pay a property manager, but also not waste all of our time doing it. So, you know, that's that's the win-win. Okay, so I'm just gonna get started. We have Dana Demford from Hemlane here today, and we are going to talk about how you maximize, like I said, maximizing your profits in your rental by hopefully being able to manage it yourself without having an official property manager, but using tools in order to do that, and not take away all of your time like in the past it has for me, because it truly has taken over my life and the times where I have rentals that I need to get rented. And I had 2 washing machines break this week. So like these are the type of things that, you know, if you're managing your own properties, their time sucks. So I'm gonna turn the seat over here to Dana. She's gonna share more about who she is and give us some great info, and I'm excited to learn from her.
Great. Thanks so much, Shannon, for having me. For everyone else, if you want to just put into the chat who you are, where you're from, where your rental properties are, anything you're looking to get out of this or any questions you have, please feel free to do so. I'm going to share some stories about other real estate investors, particularly those who went from zero to over $30,000 a month in rental income, and talk about how you can think about getting to passive income. And then we'll talk about real estate professional status at the end, because I think that is an important component. Why we invest in real estate is obviously because we do get passive income. And then on top of that, you also get all the tax benefits. So with that, I'm going to start with the deck. If you guys also have questions or want to go into a demo of Hemlane, happy to do that, but thought I would share some stories, some relatable stories of other investors, real estate investors like yourself. And then I'm a property management geek, so while I can't answer any legal questions, any kind of strategy stuff about property management or anything like that you're kind of dealing with difficult situations. We have over 28,000 rentals that we're operating nationwide. And so I've seen it all, even the most random things. And so I do love talking strategy and what we can do to make everything a win-win. So great. I will go ahead and share my screen right now. And let me just get to it. Great. Can you see my screen? Fantastic. So today we're just going to talk about modern ways to manage your rental properties. We've historically spoken about self-management and then traditional full service management. And really my passion and what I wake up and breathe every day is, how do you provide an alternative to that? How do you provide something in the middle where you can still manage your properties, but you don't have to be that active in the day-to-day? So I'm going to tell a story. This is David. He is from San Diego. And then Han and Tracy, they're from Singapore. They're actually not even US residents, by the way, or passport holders, citizens. So what do they have in common? They're not trust fund kids. When you hear their stories of what they've built, you might think that they have trust funds. They don't. But they purchased money where the rentals made sense. There's one up here in Washington. I know quite a few of you are in Washington, but you'll see they live in Singapore. They live in San Diego, and purchase rentals anywhere. And so I think there are great investments in your backyard. There's also great investments elsewhere. But the question is, once you have rental properties, how do you go ahead and manage those from anywhere? So if you move and your properties were down the street, or if you opt to purchase rentals elsewhere, how do you kind of think about the operations? If you look at property management today, it's highly fragmented. There's 137,000 property managers out there. Can anyone guess the average number of employees per property management shop?
3.
Yes, that's exactly right. 3. So it's an average of 3, and that means when you have 7 days of the week and tenants expecting things around the clock, it's a really hard job. And so property managers, by virtue of that, you'll find they do have a really, really hard time with the operations. And so what we're looking for is to help streamline, provide that transparency, and also 24/7 support. They do not have a property manager, neither one of them. So they chose to manage their properties remotely, which we will talk about today. So what did they do? I know interest rates are really high, although they are getting lower. So there is some hope, but they're never going to go back down to 3%, or I don't predict that in the next 3 years here, 5 years. And so what they do is, this is a real life purchase that Han and Tracy purchased out in the Midwest. A single family home for $51,000. In 4 years, they increased the rent on this place from $720 to $1.4K. This is the same property. You can see a fresh coat of paint. Shannon, I think you and your guys' team and everyone over at Project RE are just incredible at doing this and helping with forced appreciation. So want to give Project RE a huge shout out for that. But then after you do that and you're slowly increasing the rent and making sure that you force that appreciation we mentioned, you have to think of ways to manage your properties. And so if you think of traditional management, which is the lane here, it tends to be higher cost. So it's typically 10% of the monthly rent. And so that's about 50% of your bottom line. If you think about not your revenue, it's 10% of your revenue, but what your bottom line is. There's also not a lot of control, so you don't get to make those decisions of saying, when do I want to really be notified on certain things or make decisions of how many pets can be in there, what is the pet rent, etc. And then there's not a lot of transparency. And this I wouldn't say is the fault of property managers. I think a lot of it is the fault of the systems. And what I mean by that is if you look at property management portals, if any of you guys use Appfolio or Yardi, they are built where you don't get things in real time. You get an owner statement at the end of the month. Think how antiquated that is if you got all your emails at the end of the month, things not in real time of what's going on. And so that is, I think, part of the struggle for in property management is how do you make it where the owner has full control and full transparency? On the self-management side here, and apologies, guys, there's a fire engine in San Francisco going by, if you can hear that. On the self-management side, you must be on site. So you must physically be there to do showings, to check on inspections. It can be really time consuming. Your time is much more spent on the capital side, growing your portfolio. And then on top of that, there's increased liability. For those of you in Seattle, I see that there's in Linwood, anywhere that you see in, I think, these cities of Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, what you'll see is really, really crazy tenant landlord law. And you shouldn't have to be an expert to know everything going on. What are the maximums you can charge on pet rent, things like that. So really being guided through for that. So we decided to create a new lane here to eliminate and reduce these hurdles that you see associated with management and just provide an alternative for you to manage your properties. We drive immediate results. We have over 29,000 rentals. We've processed over $1 billion in payments, but it's about 420 million right now. And then we have 99% customer retention. So for us, our customers mean everything. Shannon giving us feedback on what we can improve, all of that. We're constantly listening to our customers to even make our product and services better for you, to enable you to manage your properties and feel like you have full control, full transparency without having to do all of the day-to-day. So we are a complete rental solution. If you think about it, up here at the top, and I can even draw on here for you a little bit, up here is everything in the system. And we'll go over this in detail, but think of this as the software platform with everything in there for you. Everything from advertising your rental to all the top listing websites, to managing your financials and your accounting and syncing your transactions from your bank account. That's all the software. This to me is, I think, a little bit boring. I would say that every single company does this, and there's nothing too exciting about it, with the exception that I would say we have a better user experience. We're constantly improving that, and we have good workflows. I think this is what really, really makes Hemlane different. It's the folks on the ground and folks who can support you. So if you need someone to do an inspection, you can get someone out to do an inspection. If you need repair services, you can use our 24/7 repair coordinators to troubleshoot, etc. And so this is a lot about what we'll talk about, but the two combined together is what makes Hemlane Hemlane. So I'll move on to the next slide here. The first thing we do is we help find and place a qualified tenant in fewer than 19 days. So we'll advertise to all the top listing websites. For you guys up in Seattle, you probably most of those are actually right in your backyard, Zillow and Redfin, etc. I might need to update the name for Redfin. I'm not sure if they're going to be calling themselves Rocket something. But we'll go ahead and advertise your rental property, and then we'll go ahead and set up do the application, background and credit check, and then lease, all of that through the app. You can go through that process. You can customize the lease, use our lease, upload your own, all of that's in there. We try to make it really simple for you, but we also follow state and county regulations on things. Some examples of that is if you use just a real-time background credit check and income verifying service, they will just provide you the real-time results. But there are certain counties where they don't allow you to do immediate real-time results. You actually have to call the county to verify if the person had an eviction on record. And so what we'll do is if we know this person has lived in any of those counties, we're going to go ahead and be calling and making sure to provide those updates for you. Tenant placement. So you can show the rental property yourself. So if you want, you can go out and show the rental property yourself, or you can select a leasing agent. So you can select someone locally who can help find and place tenants for you and do those showings. And then our fastest growing product is actually self-guided tours. I was very skeptical of self-guided tours. I will tell you at the beginning, I was like, there's no way we could do this. There will be squatters. That was over 3 years ago. We haven't had a squatter, knock on wood there, but really making sure that everything is really safe and secure. So we use biometrics, we scan the driver's license, we don't tell the tenants, we don't promote it's a self-guided tour. We have a person on the call as they're touring the property. So we do everything to make those really safe. And so happy to talk more about that, but you have various options from doing the showings yourself to getting a local leasing agent. And then you can view all your communications in one place. 100% of the rent goes to you, so we don't take any cut of the rent, and that includes late fees as well. So if there's late fees, the tenant has to pay those before they pay the rent, and 100% of that goes into your bank account. We also don't charge for ACH transactions. So I know there's a lot of softwares out there that will charge the tenant $2 or $3 to collect the rent. There's no charge for the tenants for that. You have the option to use credit card. We will warn you, do not use credit card. It's easy to dispute, but you can obviously change your settings. So a lot of different things and resources that you have there. And then we provide 24/7 emergency support on your repairs. So repair coordination is probably our most beloved service. A tenant can call us, they can submit something online. We do everything from troubleshooting the repair request to dispatching a service professional, following up, making sure that the price makes sense, approving that. We pay out the vendor, upload the invoice, everything through the system for you, so you can be hands off. So Shannon, with your two, I think you said washing machines, that is something that our team experts can definitely handle. And they're really smart about it. So I think Shannon gave an example of washing machines. The question is like, how old are these washing machines? Because if they're so far depreciated, sending out an appliance repairman who's going to charge you a service call just to say you need a new one is not going to be the most cost effective versus buying and purchasing a new one. And then with Eviction Shield is another one of our most beloved services. If your tenant's late on rent, we get a certified mediator involved. So what that mediator will do is call your tenant and they'll start to ask just the very simple question of how can we help you? And by starting with how can we help you, you learn a lot more about why the tenant is late on rent. And they're able to tell you, do we need to post a notice to the door, which we will have the process server do? Or do we need a payment plan with early termination? Like, what are the next steps that we should do? One of the most successful things that they've done is get rental assistance programs. A lot of them are local church groups to just pay the tenant's rent for that month. That way you get your rent check And then we can work on an early termination if we don't think the tenant is going to be able to pay future rent. So that's where the mediator and eviction shield comes in. We have packages designed to fit your specific needs. So here what you'll see is this is $2 per rental. Your first one's $30, and then it's just $2 after that. We also have software with 24/7 repair coordination or a more complete service. And so you can basically pick and choose from any of the services that we have here. And you can upgrade and downgrade at any time. And so there's a lot there for you. So if I go back to our stories, this is David. He said Hemlane significantly facilitates this expansion of my property portfolio. Hemlane has provided me with an ideal consolidated management solution, offering smart software and on-ground support applicable to each property. I now spend significantly less time and have less headache with the management of my properties. Being a client on Hemlane, I cannot imagine investing in more residential properties without them. And David also qualified for real estate professional status. For him in particular, it saves him nearly $40,000 in taxes each year. I did have a customer randomly at an event come up and say they were saving over 100,000. And I really wanted to learn more about how much money they actually make to do that. I didn't ask those questions, but real estate professional status, because you are self-managing your properties, you do qualify for it using the Hemlane platform. And so you can talk to your tax accountant about it. But if 50% or more of your time is spent on real estate activities and you spend at least 750 hours, you can go ahead and qualify for this. There's huge tax incentives for you. The tax incentives are if your partner has a W-2 job, because when your partner has a W-2 job, you can write it off against that. And so I know Shannon and Project RE were up at the Seattle meetup group where they talked about that in depth, which I thought was super helpful. Now, both Ahan and Tracy, as well as David, travel and live off of their cash flow, and they can just pick up their computer and check in on their rental properties at any time. Don't just take our word for it. Feel free to check out our reviews online, and then also just our stats on the leaderboard. And so we'd love to build the future of property management exclusive to Project RE. You get 25% off your first 2 months. So with that, I'd love to hear if anyone has any questions about property management or Hemlane in general.
Well, I'll start because even though I'm using it, I still I'm just starting, so I'm getting everything switched over and
Great.
awesome. So the maintenance piece.
Yeah.
So normally my tenants text me with all their washing machine problems. And this is why I haven't switched those properties over yet, because these tenants are leaving. So I'm going to get the new ones on Hemlane.
Okay.
And then it'll be exciting to have some support. So if they messaged about any kind of maintenance issue, your team could kind of navigate talking them through that and figure out what it is, and then send somebody out to do the repair too.
Exactly. So what you would want to do is give them our phone number, not your phone number. You'll have a phone number in there. It's under the services tab. If you go to repair coordination, it lists the phone number for the tenants to call. If the tenant puts in the request, it also gives them our phone number for them to call. And then, yeah, we would start with the troubleshooting process and then dispatch the service professional. Typically, it's within 24 hours that a job is accepted. 48 hours is when something gets a red flag. And if it's a P0 or a P1, you should see that within 4 hours, especially something like no water would be immediate. You should have someone at the house within 4 hours.
Great. Anybody else, please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. I'm just gonna ask a few while I have you. What's the most common thing that gets broken, or that maintenance requests for typically?
Good question. This is really interesting. I thought that it would be something related to handiwork, like handiwork as the theme. It's all plumbing. Plumbing is the biggest one. where it's leaks or clogs or something like that. I don't know why, but water is like the biggest one that we hear about in the system. And so from a staffing perspective, of like third-party service professionals, plumbers is a huge one.
Got it. Okay, Travis, you have a question? Go ahead.
All right.
Hi,
So
Travis.
my question, hey, thanks for coming on. So my question is this. So I have a real life scenario where I am the property manager for my father-in-law's sixplex, and the one of the tenants called with some issues, and I was going to stop by tomorrow. And so I'm just curious what it would be like. Oh, sorry for the background noise. Hold on one sec.
You're okay.
We can't even hear it. It's all good.
We can't
Oh,
hear
you
it.
can't? Oh,
Nope.
good. So what would it work like? Like, how would it work if, so the issue is they say there's like the dishwasher's not working, and there's the washer and dryer both smell like mold. And so I'm gonna go check it out, but how would that service request work with your service?
Yeah. Yeah. So in those particular cases, we're first going to ask them to also, and this would be if we're on the call with them, upload photos into the system as we're putting in the request. They can do it from their phone, but the reason we want some sort of photos is to understand how big this leak is. So I think you said it was the dishwasher leaking. That to us would be way bigger than the tenants saying something smells. Although mold, we always change the word to organic growth. I never call anything mold unless it's been tested for mold. So it'd be like a slight caveat there. But first of all, they'd want to see that. They get the appliance number, and then they'll do troubleshooting. So the repair coordinators, that's what they do all day. It's the one thing they know how to do very well. And so as they're doing the troubleshooting, they're trying to figure out, is this something they can fix on their own? Or can we figure out what the problem is? Now, because both of those are appliances, they're going to ask what the appliance make and model is, understand how old it is, like, is it already depreciated and most likely you're going to need a new dishwasher, or is this something that an appliance repairman could go out for? And then the call would be to consolidate both together and only have one appliance repairman who can do both. Now, we've had weird situations where the washer and dryer are some brand that a standard appliance repairman can't do, and you might have two service calls, but 95%, or I'd say 98% of rental properties, the appliance repairman can do both of those together. And so then they'll send them out. If it's something like I don't want to speak on behalf of the repair coordination team because they're much more educated than me on this, but if it's something like the mold smell in a dishwasher or in a washing machine, one of the things they're going to ask for is like, hey, do you keep it open or do you keep it closed, especially the front end washers versus the load ones? They get that smell when you keep it closed. And so they're also going to give protocols just to help in the future with something like that may not be avoidable. And then once they have the service professional on the line, they're going to give like a whole summary of what they've done the troubleshooting on and what may be the problem. And if the service professional has anything else before going on site, they'll go ahead and send that out, if that makes sense. Now, Travis, if you want to be your own service professional, you can put yourself in our system as the first appliance repairman to go out, and we could dispatch you first and alert you on the scheduling of when it works with the tenants for you to go out. You accept the time and can go out. Or if you say from that perspective, no, I don't want to be the one going out to my father-in-law's properties, you can.
Got it. And so that would be a phone call between your technician and the tenant, and they would kind of walk it through with them?
It's a repair coordinator who's usually on the call with the tenant. And then with the technicians, like if it's the actual appliance repairman, we tell them they have to talk to our team, not the tenant. Because the last thing we want is an appliance repairman going out and the tenant saying, don't you think I need a new dishwasher? We want that to be your decision and the repair coordinator helping advise on that versus the tenant's decision of what kind of dishwasher they get.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat. Does Hemlane charge a premium for maintenance invoices?
Nope. So what you see as the repair bill is exactly what will be charged. So there's no upcharges on maintenance.
Great. So you guys work all over the country. Is there anywhere exciting that you feel like you've been seeing people get good cash flow?
I get that question all the time. And then I've also had some investors be like, please don't share my secrets with anyone.
Oh, yeah.
We actually don't share your data. So we won't share any of the data in our system. It's private to you, but it's really interesting, Shannon. What I have noticed is every time I get a trend, it's almost too late. So for example, Huntsville, Alabama became really hot in I think like 2019, where there were so many requests coming in that these service professionals that we were dispatching, like they were just working with us. And so we were telling them, listen, you have to give better pricing to our owners, right? Like we're giving you a lot of service, you got to give them better pricing, et cetera. And what's really interesting is they have the highest number of PhDs per capita because it's got like the NASA space station.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, all of this stuff, but what was happening was the space stations were being built there. And so people were moving there for these jobs. And it was almost too late. By the time I figured that out, I looked at prices go up and I was like, oh my gosh, they're already up so much. And so I think from that perspective, kind of my lesson learned on that, is that sometimes I'm almost too late because we're at the point where property management, by the time there's enough traction, it's enough people purchased in that market. One thing I would say that I see a lot of our real estate investors do really well is purchase just outside of the MSA. So let's just say like you're talking about Seattle, right? If you think of institutional investors, those on Wall Street, they usually have a model that says they can't go outside of, 45 minutes from that MSA. And so all the institutional investors are very concentrated in a certain area. But if you can go just right outside there to some place where you're still driving distance from there, but you don't have the institutional investors there, I think you can really win in your market. And so it's really just checking your numbers in pro forma. And then while I showed those two examples of real estate investors who've done it well and purchased in multiple places, one thing I would say they were good at is in each place, they had like 4 or 5 rental properties. So they weren't like one property here, one property there. I think there's something to be said about knowing your market. And once you see something working, doubling down on it. A lot of times I think, you think that other investors know more than you. And it's like, keep looking at your buy box. Like, what does your pro forma say? Can you force appreciation working with Project RE, et cetera, and then go from there. So I think there's a lot of that anyway that gets built in.
Anybody else, feel free to raise your hand, but I just have a few more I'm gonna ask. I was gonna ask if you see, like, what is the biggest tip you have for people of increasing their cash flow, or even when they first get a rental, figuring out what it is to charge for, like, how much rent do you charge? And are there any metrics to that? Because I think sometimes even me, I go out there, I've had the same rental for a couple of years and I'm like, wait, should I charge more for this? Should I not? Should I test it? Should I put it up for a little higher? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the first thing is go to hemlane.com. Under resources, there's a free rent estimate. Type in your address. You can download a report that has everything from the past, I think it's 3 to 6 months based on how many comps we have of what these places actually rented for. That's the first place to start. The other place to start is I always think about experience and a tenant's experience. If I'm a tenant and I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in this particular area, what else is on the market that is like your property, and what is the closest comparable? And then what I do is I scroll all the way down on Zillow.com to days on market and applicants. And I look at that because if I see it's been on market for 60 days, I'm like, well, I know that price is too high. I know I have to be under that. And so I think there's a lot to be said about just making sure you're looking at what is active in market, because it doesn't matter. Like there's some markets where rates have changed overnight so drastically. And so while the rent estimate report is a great look back report, I always think about, if I'm a tenant and I see 2 properties, what am I going to go with? And then on top of that, I would just say that with self-guided tours, what we learned is that most tenants, it's 48% of tenants, want to get into a showing within 24 hours of their inquiring. And so today's Thursday. If you wait until Saturday or Sunday to show your property, you could miss someone. If someone else has a showing on Friday and convinces that person to submit an application, you could lose out. And so I also think just speed and professionalism is part of the game with it as well. And if you talk to tenants and you've listed your property and you don't have any inquiries, you know your price too high, or you're not accepting pets, or you have some sort of restrictions. But if you are and tenants are inquiring and they're not converting, in those showings or in those intro calls, just be like, hey, what could I be doing better? What are you seeing on market, or what did you decide to go with? Because that information is helpful. If they say, yeah, the 3rd bedroom kind of is like an office, it's really a 2-bedroom plus an office, that's really good feedback to you that maybe you really need to have your price closer to a 2-bedroom.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Looks like another question in the chat. How does Section 8 work with Hemlane?
Thanks, Sahana, for that question. Yeah, so Section 8, I'm actually a huge fan of Section 8. We've seen a lot of real estate investors use housing vouchers successfully with it. Obviously, it depends on your property, depends on what you're looking for. Like, for example, in California, everyone has to accept Section 8. And so we will make sure, if you're using any of our leasing packages, that all of that is in there of, you know, what are you accepting Section 8, and then what are the laws? As far as the application process, the tenant will still apply through Hemlane. Once you approve them, and they will say that they have a voucher in that, once you approve that, then the next step on our end is to let you know to work with the housing authority. You do need to get the inspection. I actually quite like the inspection because it just helps make sure your property is well maintained, right? You shouldn't be worried about that. And then the housing authority sends that money directly to you. In Hemlane, you can track it. So you can track how much is your tenant paying and how much is Section 8 paying on the rent. And you can track all of that in the system. So it's a great question.
Awesome. Let's see. Do you guys have any more questions about property management, maximizing rents, minimizing rental owning headaches? Okay, is there anything else you think we should know, Dana, before I let you go?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing I've noticed with self-management is your personality. And so oftentimes I feel like investors will immediately try to make a deal happen. And they say, I'm just going to self-manage to make the numbers look good. But there's different personalities that lend their way to self-management. And so if you're really strong at operations, that basic package may be better for you. If you are not really good with operations and stuff and too busy, complete may be better. If you say, I want to be hands off, I never want to hear about my property, I don't really care what the maintenance bills are, I just don't want to hear about anything, go to a traditional property manager. You know, sometimes our sales team does have to say that of like, hey, actually, based on your personality, that may be better. And so I just kind of want to leave you with no one size fits all. We're really here to help provide that alternative and hybrid model, which we've seen work successfully. And then, oh, Sahana has something that says, is it true we can charge above market rent if it's Section 8? This is being recorded, so I might want to be a little bit careful with what I say. But one, it depends on, I think, where you are, but there have been cases where certain markets, everyone's saying no to Section 8, right? And so when a Section 8 tenant finds a property, they know how much they pay is 1/3 of their income. That's their rent of what it is. and Section 8 will cover the rest. And so whatever they find, even if it's above market, you know, to them, it doesn't matter because the rest is paid by Section 8, like they're kind of capped there. And so you have seen, and it's interesting, I'd love to actually talk to the housing authority to see how they prevent this. But I have seen that there are people who have Section 8 properties where they could not have gotten a tenant in there at a market rate, but Section 8 does accept it for the housing vouchers and the tenants. So I have seen that happen. I think every market is different, but I've definitely seen that before. And I actually have the question of how does the housing authority, especially because this is like government funding, how do they try to prevent that? And I'm sure they have something in their formulas, but of course there's a variance there that allows upcharges on the rental rate. So yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think we kind of covered this, but I just want to mention one of the things that I really like about Hemlane, which is in the boring section though, is just the rent collection. Like they set that up, it's reoccurring, it gets to me, and I don't have to think about it. I currently have one group of tenants that sends me a check right now, which is ridiculous. Um,
Yeah.
just like
I
not
also,
my favorite. It's not my favorite. And so I'm really feeling that pain point right now. And I'm excited to get them once they get to the new year set up at sent over to something logical.
yeah. And I also find it's interesting, even if you don't, even if they're doing direct deposit, you still have to log in and confirm they sent the right amount, they sent it on the right date. I
Correct.
mean, the beauty of a property management software like Hemlane for that is like, we will say, woohoo, they paid their full amount of rent because we're tracking it. And if they try to pay you $10 less because that was what it was before the renewal, it will say, nah, you got to pay the full amount. And so there's certain things like that in place to make your life easier.
Yeah. There's one more question in the chat.
Oh yeah. Okay. So Sahana, I think that's how you pronounce your name. Is Hemlane only in metropolitan areas or do we cover rural areas? That's a fantastic question. So our basic and essential package, you can use in anywhere, rural areas, wherever. The complete package is where we have a list of our own service professional network, and that includes handyman, general contractors, plumbers, electricians. Even though there's plumbers, electricians, and all of that in these rural areas, a lot of times we can't find ones where we can get the prices to where we expect them to be. And we're stuck with one guy in one area who has full monopoly over it. And so usually your property would only qualify for the basic or essential. And then if you needed that local support, you would just plug in, here's my general contractor, here's my electrician, here's my plumber, and we'll call them out, we'll coordinate, we can even pay them as well on your behalf, but you would have to fill out that network.
Yep. That makes sense. But I'm assuming people who have a property already maybe have some support from local vendors that they can plug in there. So
Yeah.
great. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. And Dan, if you want to stay on for a second after everybody goes, I do have one question for you, but please check it out, guys. I'm using it. It's awesome. I can't believe how much time it's going to save me. It's saving me a ton of time already just posting ads. It's been fantastic and getting people set up on there. So I love it. It's so great. It's a great platform. So I think it's a good in between for those of you, like she was saying, it's a great hybrid. Thank you. Thanks again for coming on, Dana. And if you guys have other questions, I'm happy to forward those to the Hemlane team as well when you go to check it out.
Thanks so much,
Great.
Patrick. How are you?
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. There we go. Okay, let me stop the recording real quick.
Yeah.
There we